Good morning, children. Welcome back once again to the recorded classes. Hope you all are fine, and I request you all to go through the entire video and not to swipe the video once we send it. Please go through the video. And I'm happy that you all are sending your classwork and homework on time. Keep up the good work, children, and continue doing the same. Please make use of this opportunity in learning as much as you can. All right? So, are we ready for today's classes then? Let's get started with today's class then. Before I start today's class, let me tell you what I will be covering in today's session. In today's session, we will firstly do a recap of what was taught in the previous session, after which we will complete the poem Waiting at the Window. We'll look into some vocabulary. Then, of course, the main part of the session, which is grammar. We will learn what is the difference between must, ought to, and need, and where to use them in a sentence. We will also summarize what has been done today, and of course, your question time. I will ask you questions. Either you will have to write it in your rough book and send it across, or while you're watching the video, pause your video, send a message to me, and let me see who will get all the answers correct. And of course, we will not forget the classwork and the homework. Before we start today's session, children, let's quickly do a recap of what we learned in the previous session. We learned who the author of Waiting at the Window is, that is A.A. Milne. And I also did tell you a little about him. We also saw how this little boy is looking at the rain standing near the window pane and also is playing a game with the drops of water that is falling from the window pane, and he also named them as John and James. We also learned in grammar what is can and what is could. What is can and where can be used? Can is used to show ability. A few examples: they can dance, he can't play the piano, he can play football, he can swim, he can skate. And what is could? Could is the past tense of can, and it can be used in showing ability, possibility, permission, request, suggestion, and conditional of can. Hope you all are very clear till here, children. Let's start today's class then. Kindly turn to page 11, Waiting at the Window. In the last session, we learned till, that is the 7th stanza. We'll continue with the 8th stanza today. Please toss your fingers through while I'm reciting the poem. John is moving off at last. James is going pretty fast. John is rushing down the pane. James is going slow again. James has met a sort of smear. John is getting very near. Is he going fast enough? James has found a piece of fluff. John has quickly hurried by. James was talking to a fly. John is there and John has won. Look, I told you, here's the sun. I have recited the poem for you all. Please read it the way I did, and also what you will do is you will frame sentences for these words that I'm telling now. Once again, children, listen carefully. You will frame sentences for these words that I'm going to tell now. You will frame sentences for pretty, slow, one. Once again, I'll repeat. Pretty, slow, one. Write it in your rough book, children, and send it while you're sending your homework. Let me explain the poem, children. Now, while I'm explaining, I want you all to imagine yourself the way this little boy does. So now we saw this little boy looking at the rain near the window pane, names two raindrops as James and John. Now we saw that James is coming down the window and he does not want James to win. He wants the other drop, that is the other raindrop to win, which is John. Must be he likes John very much. Now, while John is almost coming down the window pane, he sees James also is coming fast as John. Suddenly, he sees John is coming, trying to fall quicker than James. Then he also feels or imagine that James is met with a sticky substance. That is, smear means something sticky or something which is fluid, which is sticky, or some substance that is sticky. And then he's seeing that John is almost falling down. Again, he imagines that James found something like a cotton ball or something made of wool or a feather. All right. Then he's waiting for John to win the race. Now, while John is almost falling down a little more and John will win the race, he again imagines that James is talking to a fly. Then finally, John falls down the window pane and has won the race. By the time John wins the race, the little boy sees sun outside and says, "Look, I told you, the sun has come and he's off to play." It's a very simple poem, children, and hope you all have understood this. Let's look at some word meanings now. Smear, a thick substance over a surface. Fluff, soft and light substance. Hurried, moving or working rapidly. Let's move on to grammar, children, now. In today's grammar session, we'll learn the difference between must, ought to, and need. Let's move on to the first one, must. What does must stands for? Must expresses personal obligation. It also expresses what the speaker thinks is necessary. Not only that, it expresses subjective obligation. Look at these two examples. I must go to bed earlier. You must answer all the questions. Let's look at some more examples. Must as necessity. You must give up smoking. It's bad for you. You must study the last two chapters before the test. Must when it comes to certainty. Look at all that snow. It must be really cold outside. Jack must be home. I heard a noise coming from his room. Must in the form of prohibition. You must not use your smartphone while you're driving. You must not smoke in this building. And lastly, must in the form of personal obligation. I must memorize all of these rules about modal verbs. I must stop smoking. It's bad for me. Children, hope you all have understood what must is and where to use must. Let's look at the second one, which is ought to. What does ought to mean? Ought to means should or must. Not only that, ought to is also advice or probability. Let's look at some examples. You ought to revise your lesson. Margaret ought to exercise more. Our team ought to win this match for today. She ought to receive the package tonight. Now, as I told you, ought to means should or must. Now, the examples that I gave you was for must. Now, let's look at some examples for should in the form of ought to. You ought to answer your questions now, which means you should answer your questions now. He said we ought to come back tomorrow, which means he said we should come back tomorrow. Is it easy, children? Let's look at the last helping verb in today's grammar session, which is need. Need also means obligation, duty, necessity, or it can even be must or have to. Let's look at some examples. Before that, need can be used as a modal verb or as a main verb with no change in meaning. Here are some example sentences for you all. You need to work until late tonight. Do I need to put more oil in my car? I need to finish it tonight because I want to take tomorrow off. I need to finish it tonight. I have a deadline tomorrow. I don't need to finish it tonight. Does she need to do it? So these are the different forms of need that you can use in a sentence. Hope you all have understood, children, and hope helping verbs were useful, and you all should know where to use all the helping verbs that I taught you all. Let's summarize all we have learned today, children. In today's session, we learned how the little boy waiting at the window pane is happy to see that John won the race. He was very happy because he wanted John to win the race. Must be he liked John the most, and every time James, that is the little drop of rain which was about to fall first, he was imagining that it was talking to a fly, or it found a sticky substance, or it found something like soft as a feather, or like a wool, or something of that sort. And then finally he's happy to see that one drop of rain falls down first, and he's so happy by the time the sun also is up and he's ready to go out and play. Then we learned some word meanings. We learned the difference between must, ought to, and need, and we also learned few example sentences. That's all for today, children. Now, let's move on to our question time now. Are you all ready for the questions, children? Hope you all are having a paper and a pen handy to write down the questions that I'm asking. So let's get started. The first one. Whom is the poet referring to in this poem? Whom is the poet referring to in this poem? Tell me, what does need mean? Or tell me, when or where do you use need? And what was the child doing looking at the window pane? What was the child doing looking at the window pane. To whom was James talking? To whom was James talking? What's the meaning of smear? What's the meaning of smear? And lastly, what's the past tense of lose? The past tense of lose. So you'll quickly write the answers and send it to me via WhatsApp. I will be waiting to check who the first person is to answer all these questions correctly. All the best, children. And the last part of the session for today is your assignment. Let's talk about homework first, children. Okay? And please listen carefully to what I'm telling. Okay? Because every recorded class, in spite of telling you all what to do very clearly, I still have students messaging me asking, "Ma'am, where should the homework be written? Is it in the homework book or reader?" That's why I'm repeatedly telling you all, please listen carefully to what is being said. You will have to do this particular homework, what I'm telling now, in the reader itself. Turn to page 44 in your all-in-one book. You will do the second and third main in the reader itself. Once again, I'm repeating. Turn to page 44 in your grammar book. The second and third main, you will do it in the reader itself. Okay? And then I will be sending a summary of the poem Waiting at the Window, which you will have to write it in your classwork book. Once again, I'm repeating the summary of the poem Waiting at the Window. I will send the notes via WhatsApp. You will have to write that in your English classwork, and you will follow the way I have written. You will neatly write the date and draw double margin exactly the way I have written. You will write it and take your time. I will give you all time till Monday. Monday evening, you'll submit all the classwork. And Monday, I will be conducting test for y'all on, that is, waiting at the window, and the grammar that I taught, helping verbs. I'm repeating once again. Monday, I will be conducting test on waiting at the window and helping verbs. You will refer your reader and the recorded classes that I sent, and also the notes that I am sending. All right, children, was I very clear? Hope you all liked today's session and hope you all have understood what has been taught. In case if you didn't understand or if you have not understood anything, always feel free to call me or message me. All right, until we meet on Monday, this is Ma'am Anna Rashekar telling you all goodbye, stay safe, and prepare for your test for Monday. Take care, children.